Imagine asking someone 3,000 years ago what year it is.
Must be about 1000 BC.
That's not what they would say. It's not just because that wouldn't have made sense.
You see, official calendars were only really used by official organizations like governments.
Basically, any entity, organization that had to manage many people at a given time or at one time, they needed an official calendar system.
But us ordinary folk who apparently wrapped ourselves in towels did not care what some distant king used as his calendar.
But now we're in a world where everyone is on the same calendar. How did that happen? See, to get here required
Astronomy, a pope,
and Britain deleting 11 days. But why are we in the current year? Why do leap years exist? Why did Britain delete 11 days? And why do some Christians celebrate Christmas in January? To answer these questions, we're going to first need to introduce ourselves to
Julius Caesar.
So in comes Julius Caesar, whose favorite things were chicken salad and calendars. Julius Caesar decided, for his own reasons, that now we're going to use a standard calendar system, and this system is going to be based on the sun. In this solar calendar, a year would be 365 days. However, what even the Romans understood is that a solar year does not follow an exact perfect 365 days, but rather it's 365 days and 1/4. But the year only has 365 days. What's up with that? So now we have 6 hours missing. What's the solution?
So let's have a look at it visually. This is 1 year, and after 1 year we've lost 6 hours. And another year, we lost another 6 hours. That's 12. Okay, that's 18 hours. Wait, so now that's 1 full day. So now we can introduce the leap day, and that extra day resets the calendar.
Nevertheless, it was still quite extraordinary at the time to have this calendar system which never goes out of sync. In fact, this calendar was so good that after 1600 years, it was only out of sync by about 11 days, which is amazing except for one problem. We were out of sync by 11 days. But why? You said a year is 365 1/4 days. What's up with that?
Because I lied.
It actually comes down to 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes and 45 seconds, which is about 11 minutes short a day. Not too bad, is it? Think again, because after 128 years, 11 minutes adds up to 1 whole day. What's up with that? So what do we do? Delete a day? 2 days? 11 days? Someone had to fix it. In comes Pope Gregory XIII. Pope Gregory instituted the coincidentally named Gregorian Calendar. Now you'd think everyone would be thrilled, right? Like they'd be like, yeah, come on, get our calendar back in sync. That's great. Sign me up. Actually, no. Because it took hundreds of years for the other countries to accept it. What's up with that?
The very first countries to accept it were Spain, Germany, Italy, Poland and Portugal. Basically, the Catholic countries.
However, the other countries, they were Protestants, and this was around the 1500s. The separation was still quite recent. See, Britain accepted it 172 years later after it was instituted by Pope Gregory in 1752. In fact, you can see it in the historic calendars of the UK, where they had skipped 11 whole days, where everyone went to sleep on September the 2nd, 1752, and they woke up on September the 14th. 1752. If 170 years doesn't sound like a lot, try 338 when the Russians finally accepted it. That's centuries of generations growing up in a world where the international community could not agree on what date it was. Because they're all Christian countries, right? Because the Brits were Christian, the Spanish were Christian, and the Russians were Christian. So why not? Why was there such a hesitation? What's up with that? Christianity had somewhat of a minor disagreement. In fact, these disagreements were so minor, it only affected their core theology. This is not a video about why the Protestants disagreed with the Catholics and why the Eastern Orthodox and when did Mormons come into this. So we might think that the calendar is just maths, but really it was a whole lot of messy geopolitics. But wait, if it was that messy, how did the entire Western world finally end up accepting the Gregorian calendar? What's up with that? So it seems, nonetheless, that the Protestant countries slowly accepted the change first. Britain, after 170 years, and some of the Eastern Orthodox countries like Russia after 340 years. But really, the Russians were actually a lot more hesitant than you'd think. It was actually after the October Revolution, which happened in November. On January 31st, 1918, they went to sleep and the Russians woke up on Valentine's Day, February 14th.
Well, to be fair,
I didn't forget, the government just changed the date. That's quite crazy when you think about it, because that's just over 100 years ago, which in terms of history is a very recent acceptance. We take it for granted, but this is not how the world operated. But wait, why do some Christians still celebrate Christmas almost 2 weeks later? What's up with that? See, calendars serve different purposes. And up until now, all we've been talking about is a civil calendar used for civil purposes. But for different kinds of events, let's say religious ones, you might be following a different calendar because they're tracked by different calendars. And the Eastern Orthodox Christian, their point was that they've been following the Julian calendar for Christmas all these centuries. So are you saying that all these years we were following Christmas on a different day and that now we're right? The reality is different denominations answered that question very differently. But today, some or all Orthodox Christians celebrate Christmas on the 7th of January, Gregorian, which coincides with December 25th in the Julian calendar. We Muslims have our holidays, and we don't use the Gregorian or the Julian calendar, we use the Hijri calendar. Different calendars have different purposes for different reasons. And to commemorate Eid or Ramadan or Hajj, we use a completely different calendar. But if I'm just trying to book a flight, the Gregorian calendar does just fine.
There's a generic slogan. How may I help you?
Hi, I was just calling to check if you use the Gregorian calendar to book all your flights.
Excuse me, what?
Wait, we keep talking about who, what, when, where. What about why? And was Gregory actually right? So how exactly is the Gregorian calendar more mathematically correct? Well, remember what I said about the Julian calendar. It was out of sync by 1 day every 128 days. So are we saying we remove a day every 128 years? That's not going to be feasible, innit? Like, who's going to be keeping track of the 128 times table? What, 128, then 256, and then what? What's 256? We're not doing this. We're not going to do this. You can't trust people to keep doing this. So what can we do? We need a nice round number, close enough to 128. 99? Nah. 101? Nah. So the Gregorian calendar stuck with how the Julian calendar did it and added a leap year every 4 years. 1604, 1608, 1612, 1616, 1620, 1624, 1628, 1632, 1636, 1640, 1692, 1696, 1700. So this is where we're going to remove the leap year. But why didn't we remove the leap year in the year 1600? Hold on for a second. We'll get there. We're going to maintain that every 4 years is a leap year, except every 100 years. So 1700 will not be a leap year. 1704 will. But 2000 will. Why? Because we're taking away just a bit too many leap years. So let's look at a generic 400-year period in the Julian calendar. So as you can see here, after 128 years, that's 1 extra day. Then at 256 years, that's accumulated to 2 extra days. And then after 384 years, we've now accumulated 3 extra days. So after the remaining 16 years to get to 400 years, we've accumulated about 3.1 extra days. So let's see what happens if we follow the simple century rule and remove a leap year every 100 years. So 100 we remove a leap day, 200 we'll remove a leap day, 300 we'll remove a leap day, and 400 we'll remove a leap day, and we end up with 4 days removed in total. So while the calendar has gained about 3.1 days, the simple century rule removes only 4 days. That's almost 1 day too much. So this rule overcorrects. So what we'll do is add the leap day back every 400 years. So now we have 3 days removed every 400 years. This is excellent because what it does now, it makes the entire calendar go off sync about after 8,000 years. So that's the reason. The reason we are following Pope Gregory and not Julius Caesar is because some Catholics wanted the calendar to match the seasons. And the reason that Britain deleted 11 days is to catch up with the rest of Europe so we can maintain a close relationship with the Union even though we voted to. And that the Gregorian calendar is the world's shared calendar. Not because it's the only calendar or that it is somehow nature's calendar like the lunar calendar, but because the modern world needed to organize. And calendars aren't just about measuring time, they're really about whatever you want them to do.